Okay, this will be an interesting one if we can make this look good. It's a newspaper. Part of it's actually a lift out of a newspaper, and it's printed on that horrible newsprint. So we're going to give it some interesting treatment. Hopefully make it more saturated. It's going to look more interesting than the original. I think we're going to just take out some of the background because we don't want to take too much out, otherwise the image becomes rather wishy-washy. We're just going to make it contrasty. I think the copy density should stay in the middle. So we're just going to make this look really nice. So we're just going to bump up the colours like we normally do. Uses up more toner, but it's a better image. So let's see how we go. Okay, let's see what we got. What do we have? We have here a Sunday Telegraph body and soul lift out. Interesting. We're just going to make something interesting out of this piece of paper. I'm not really big on newspapers. I don't normally read them. I'm probably more likely to read a newspaper over someone's shoulder than actually read. I never buy newspapers. Newspapers are just something I just don't particularly like. I guess it's the awkward size and the ink that rubs off on your fingers. I don't really like the sensation of that ink. I've got Asperger's syndrome, even though it hasn't been formally diagnosed, and I just find the sensation of that ink on my fingers rather unpleasant. That looks quite interesting. So that's one of the main reasons why I don't like newspaper, is because of the shape and the size, and of course the dirty ink. But basically I do believe newspapers should have a future. We should keep newspapers because, hey, I'm only just one of the few people who doesn't particularly enjoy the feel or size of a newspaper, but most people just love their morning paper. I know they do. And that's one thing I want to promise one day, is that we will not go paperless. I mean, paperless is probably more damaging because the electronics of today don't typically last. So to dispose of a tablet or a phone, which you're reading your virtual newspaper on, well, it's easier to recycle a newspaper than it is to recycle a phone or a tablet. And basically, there's more, as I said, electronics just don't last, and they end up as e-waste, and a lot of people don't dispose of their e-waste properly. So a newspaper is a good way of managing e-waste. So we keep the newspapers, folks. We're not going to get rid of them. My opinion, that's my fucking opinion. You know, you love your paper, and same with books. E-books have a place, and yes, and newspapers, whatever you call them, e-newspapers or whatever, virtual newspapers, I don't know what to call them, but basically newspapers on phones and tablets, yes, we still have them. So we have both a paperless and paper mix. We don't have it one or the other, but the advantage of paper is that it's easier to dispose of. You can throw a newspaper in a worm farm, if I'm correct. Correct me if I'm wrong, but basically, but you can't throw a computer or a tablet or a phone on a worm farm. You've got to get them properly recycled, and that's a hassle. So I do see newspapers have a future, as well as newspapers online. We've got to have everything, but most people just love a good read. There's just something about the newspaper that gets a lot of people. That people just love it. And I want to see that. Well, my future desire is to build a photocopier that's artificially intelligent. And of course, when you're wanting to build photocopiers, well, that sure is a sure sign that paperless is not going to happen. We're not going to go paperless, folks. I'm going to make sure that we keep the paper. We keep papers. This photocopier might even print copies of newspapers, but we'll have to work out a way of putting that kind of paper through it. It might even be an improvement on the newspaper if we use a toner-based system rather than the ink. But a lot of people, I don't know if maybe even a lot of people probably like to get their fingers dirty from a newspaper. There's just something nostalgic for a lot of people, I hazard a guess. So we're going to keep the newspapers, guys, and the books, as well as have the paperless options as well. We've got to keep our minds open. We don't want people to be railroaded into something because it makes more money. We've got to think of the environment, and we've got to think of the people who are the end users. And if they like paper, so be it. There'll fucking be some. We'll keep the paper. We're not going to let the paper go. We're going to keep it. We want to make this world a world of choice, not a world of rich people saying that we got to go paperless, and it's a fucking gimmick because you can't recycle easily your tablet or your phone. Not like you can recycle a newspaper and just throw it in your fucking worm farm. You can't throw e-waste into landfill. So folks, we want to have a choice of things. But in the future, I'm hoping that the culture, that people will learn lessons from these environmental problems we have. So if people start getting poisoned by e-waste, well, at least hopefully mankind will wake up to themselves, because it looks like that's the only way these rich fucks are going to wake up to themselves, is if they end up having e-waste like lead, sulphur? Yeah, I think there'd be sulphur somewhere. Cadmium, I was meant to say. Or mercury. And if some people start getting sick, that might be the only way that we can stop this e-waste. So in future, we've got to make our electronics, such as tablets, phones, computers, and in this case, photocopiers, we've got to make them last long, and we've got to keep them serviceable. And then, of course, we've got to design these equipment so that they're easy to recycle. When finally the day comes when they cannot be fixed, my goal is to build a photocopier that's artificially intelligent and is good for the planet. And one of the features I want to build into this photocopier, apart from it lasting 60 years for spare parts and service and consumables, we're going to make this machine easy to recycle, easy to strip, easy to pull apart, so that when that 60-year life cycle has been exhausted, we have an easy to recycle product. So that makes recycling less daunting. So we've got to change things, folks, but we must keep the paper flowing. We've got to keep that paper, guys, because I know how much you fucking love this shit. So we're going to keep the paper. Got to go.